Hi guys, hope you all doing alright. So today I'm here to be presenting to you this book called Mouse. Exceptional book. I absolutely loved it. So you can see I made this presentation back in January. I only had time to do the video now though. It's alright. So today I'm not only here to present to you, but also to help you with maybe future essays at your school. I will share in the description of the video a link so you can open the PowerPoint slides and use them for future essays. But don't copy paste, guys. They are my favorite parts of the book and what I believe shows the best meaning of the book. Now make your own research too, okay? So let's start. So guys, the full title of the book is called Mouse, the Survival's Tale. So it was published into two volumes basically, but you can buy it as one as mine. So the first volume was called Mouse, My Father Bleeds Sister, and the second, Here My Troubles Began. You can see I have the double version. The first was published into a magazine in some small pieces, as you can see on the picture. But then it was published as a full book too. So it's a postmodern graphic novel. Yeah, it's basically the biography of Artie's father. Now, let me introduce you to the plot of the book. So, basically the book is divided into two parts: the past and the present, which are two stories going on at the same time. So in the past we follow Vladek, which is the father of the writer. We follow his life back in Poland as a young man, and his life during the outbreak of World War II, and how he survived the Auschwitz camp and the ghettos. And in the present, Artie, the writer, Art Spiegelman, meets his father in New York City, trying to record his memories so he can write his book. So actually, the relationship is very tense, and often we can see how hard life in Auschwitz was and how it shaped survivors. So now let's see the etymology and symbolism of the title. The title mouse is a German word for mouse, of course, it's very obvious. So now this fits the most obvious visual idea in the book. Basically, Jews as German mice and other cultures, other people from other countries, so Germans as cats, Poles as pigs, Americans as dogs, and French as frogs. We'll talk about why the author chose to draw them as animals in a while. So this also helps us understand how how the Nazi propaganda was racist and often describes Jews as vermin or rats. So basically, it helps us understand what the Germans said about the Jews, right? However, this title also has deeper linguistic roots. So in German, there is a verb "mauscheln," which is historically meant to speak German like an Eastern European Jew, so basically with a Jewish accent, Yiddish accent. Later, it also took an additional negative meaning, which was to cheat. Now, these words come from Mausche or Moischele, a Yiddish form of the name Moses. So basically, what was originally a normal Jewish name turned into a racist nickname and into a verb describing Jewish-sounding speech. Now, something that Hitler said, and is in the first pages of the book, that basically the Jews are undoubtedly a race, but they're not human, by Adolf Hitler. So when Spiegelman calls his book Mouse, the title can take several meanings. You choose what you want to believe. So it's either mouse, the animal that is used for Jews in the story, Mauschel, a way Germans mocked how Jews spoke German, and Moses, a Jewish name connected to Jewish identity and history. Now, All these titles fit the book's focus on how Jews were dehumanized and turned into stereotypes, especially Eastern European Jews who were often mocked for how they spoke, for their language and their customs. So the title reflects how Nazis viewed Jews not as humans but as vermin, highlights the predator-prey relationship between the Nazis and the Jews because, as I told you, Nazis are drawn as cats, so cats naturally hunt mice, right? And it also creates an emotional distance while exposing the brutality of racism at that time. Now, let's just make a quick summary of the plot. So, Maus narrates the story of Vladek and Art Spiegelman, who were two survivors of the Auschwitz concentration camps, and they resettle in New York. And Artie, their son, records his father's memories in a series of oral interviews. So, very quickly, the whole story basically it starts with Vladek's life from the 1930s in Poland, where he marries Anja, his rise in business in the Polish town of Sosoniec where they lived, how he worked in the Polish army, his subsequent capture and release by the Nazis in 1939, his plans and strategies to hide his family members and friends, and to avoid being sent to the camps, and finally, his experience in Auschwitz, the most terrifying of all. So here there's more details about the plot summary. So if you want, you can download the link of the presentation as I told you to read it. Now, what I really want you to remember, and is important to remember, is that Maus describes actually 5 different stories at the same time, relating them all together. First, it's Vladek's story, who was held a prisoner in Auschwitz and how he survived. Angie's story, who committed suicide after surviving Auschwitz and coming to America. Artie's story himself, so basically the writer's story. Rishu's story, Artie's brother, who was poisoned by his babysitter so as not to be taken to Auschwitz. And the historical story, the overall story, the effort to exterminate European Jews by Adolf Hitler. So now let's go to the themes of the book. The book has many themes, and for obvious reasons, one of the main ones is survival, and the first we're going to talk about. So the book shows what people must endure mentally, physically, and morally to stay alive in extreme conditions. And it discusses the effort to survive the death of beloved ones. So because the author does not only struggle to understand what Auschwitz and the Holocaust is, but he also struggles with his baby brother's death, even if he didn't quite meet him, and also struggles with his mother's suicide after she came to the US and killed herself. Because the Holocaust didn't affect directly him, but it affected his family members who lived through it and who were survivors. And her mother killed herself due to that. And that was when the Holocaust actually affected him. It was not directly. Then Vladek's memories are very painful and sometimes contradictory. So one time he may say that Auschwitz was terrible, and he may describe a time that is unbearable, but other times he may tell his son, stop being so dramatic, it wasn't that bad. And basically, trauma changes how a person tells and remembers a story. Artie struggles with guilt, frustration, and admiration towards his father. The book explores how children of survivors inherit emotional wounds. So, now Maus addresses the constant fight with the wounds of the past. At the end of volume 1, so the first part of the book, Artie asks his father for his mother's diaries. And while his father first tells him that, of course I'll give them to you, he actually remembers that he burned them. And that can actually remind us of the Nazi book burning. So at that point, his father says something. Only I know what she said. I wish my son, when he grows up, he'll be interested in this. And later on, his son called him a murderer. Now, it's not that he actually killed his wife or someone. It's he killed the last memories that remained from his mother because he didn't have a lot of time with her. She committed suicide. Um, Now, on one hand, Artie considers his father a person who disrespected the Jewish legacy because he killed the last memories of a Jew. However, he actually totally depends on him so that he can write his story, his book, the book we're reading today, because he's the only one who survived Auschwitz and can still talk to him today. Now, next theme is guilt, which is also one of the main themes of the book. So the memories of Artie's father are very painful, and they contradict themselves, as I told you. Trauma has basically shaped his personality. Auschwitz has shaped his personality. He's very anxious, obsessed with things, and he definitely does not trust anyone. Artie carries second-hand trauma. It's not that he lived the Holocaust, but he lives with the consequences on his parents every single day because they raised him in a way that made him feel guilty that he has an easier life than them, that he didn't have to go through all this. Now, he is pressured to do justice to their story. He's pressured to make people remember their story correctly and not misinterpret it. And also, he's angry that the trauma made his childhood difficult while he could have lived a better childhood. Now, the theme shows that war doesn't end when the guns stop, when the guns stop firing. It actually continues in bodies, minds, relationships. A big part of Monster is not just the Holocaust, it's actually a father-son relationship. Vladek is both a victim of Nazi violence and a very difficult father. He's controlling, often very insensitive too. Artie is both a loving son and a frustrated adult who feels that he can never live up to the ghost of his older brother issue. He actually admits that in some parts of the book. He actually admits that he goes to a psychologist and admits that I feel like I'm never enough for my parents, you know? So, here's an example of this. In the very first page of the book, actually, first one. So, basically, it was summer and he was playing with his friends, and he had an accident. His roller skate came loose, and his friends left him there. Didn't care. When he went home, listen to what his father told him. Why would you cry, Artie? Hold better on the wood. So he had asked him to help him saw something. And Artie says, I fell and my friends escaped away without me. His father stopped sawing and told him, friends, we're friends. If you lock them together in a room with no food for a week, then you could see what it is, friends. So basically, it's a way of telling him that there are no friends in this world. What do you mean? Because in Auschwitz, that's what he learned. It's not that he doesn't think. It's not that you don't have friends in this world. It's actually not accurate. But that's what Auschwitz taught him because in such harsh conditions, you will and can do everything in your power to survive, even if that means sacrifice others. So the importance of family relationships in the book is that this book is not, and actually the author says it himself, it's an autobiographical history of my relationship with my father, a survivor of the Nazi death camps. It's not that he wrote this book about the Nazi death camps. He wrote this book and it was meant to be about his relationship with his father. And in the background, he is a Nazi death camp survivor. It's not that he aimed to tell us about Nazi death camps. But it's basically a part of the story because that's how his father. That's how his father's way of treating others was shaped. So here you can see some of my favorite scenes in the book, and basically understand how Auschwitz really affected the relations with everyone that Vladek had. So on the first page you can see Vladek walking back to Sosoniec, his hometown in Poland, but the pathway is in the form of a swastika, as you can see. This shows that wherever he went, whatever he did, even if it was present or past, he was just thinking of Auschwitz and memories kept coming up. And then one of the very rare instances where we see an actual picture in this book, you can see Vladek's actual picture, wearing an Auschwitz uniform, which shows us that basically it affected him so much that all his relations after were also the people with whom he had relations were also influenced by the Holocaust, even if they hadn't gone through it. Now, there's also another theme: intergenerational gap. So, children of Holocaust survivors grew up with presence and absence of Holocaust memory in their daily lives because they did not go through it. They only learned about it hearing stories by their parents. Uh, so Mouse portrays how these children, such as Artie, grow up and live their adult lives with a deep mark from their families because their parents, well, I'm not saying that they didn't suffer in Auschwitz and Holocaust. I'm saying that they actually transpassed that suffering to their children because the children now felt guilt, uh, felt how troubling it was to be in Auschwitz. They didn't have the childhood like I did, that you did. They had a very difficult and basically troubling childhood. It's he feels that he cannot restore the gaps that Auschwitz created in his parents. So next theme, moral choices in impossible situations. What would you do if you were in Vladek's place? So would you push someone, another Jew most probably, uh, into an oven or into an actual gas chamber instead of a German doing that, instead of a Nazi doing that, to earn to earn your day's bread? Or would you save the Jew and sacrifice yourself? Would you repair a German's broken shoe sole, or would you sacrifice yourself? And would you obey two soldiers and get into the camp, or would you sacrifice yourself once again? Well, most probably you would try to save your life in any possible way, wouldn't you? Now let's pass on to symbols. And first of all, the animals. So let me explain. Spiegelman's decision to use animal characters in Mouse has been criticized by many because people thought that it actually makes the Holocaust look ridiculous. But he has justified his choice, so here it is. First of all, I've never been through anything like that, and it would be counterfeit to try and pretend that the drawings are representations of something that's actually happening. I don't know what a German looked like who was in a specific small town doing a specific thing. I'm bound to do something inauthentic. Also, I'm afraid that if I did it with people, it would be very corny. It would out as some kind of odd plea for sympathy. And that wasn't my point. That for sure wasn't his point. So he uses animals instead of people to tell his story, tell his father's story, to make the reader stop and think. He doesn't use people because, as he said, it would make it look like he's pleading for sympathy, not like he's trying to actually tell us something, to actually teach us something. So it reminds us that the idea of different races is something that humans made up. Because you see here, his father just wore a pig mask, and the Poles just introduced him to other Poles, and he actually made business with them later in the book. So you're poor like me, so I can trust you, you know? That's what the Pole told him. But that's not actually true, because he was Jew, he was wearing a mask, so the animal images are symbolic. They're a way to show how people see each other. They see you wearing a Polish mask, they think you're Polish, so you can just act. Your identity changes depending on how others see you. You can become many people at the same time. The Nazis are shown as cats, Jews as mice, which helps us understand the power difference, because Nazis are the cats who hunt down the Jews. Basically, cats hunt down mice. So it's allegoric, don't you think? Now, Spiegelman does not excuse anyone's behavior. Even though the characters look like animals, they think, feel, and behave like humans. This helps the reader understand that they are fully human, and that Hitler's beliefs were very wrong and very cruel. By using animals, Spiegelman doesn't make the Holocaust seem less curious. Instead, he helps readers think more deeply about what happened and why it really matters that much. So, here, a very contradictory scene of the book. It's the scene where his mother committed suicide and it was announced to him. So it's the only place on the book, the only scene in the book where you can actually see human faces. And even still, in most of the pictures actually, the faces are kind of distorted. You know, they look like they're melted, look like they're crying, because he wants us to understand. He wants us, the readers, to understand that it hit him very hard. He didn't understand why she would commit suicide. Now, last symbolism, the maps. In Mao's Art Spiegelman uses many maps, drawings, and diagrams to help us understand the Holocaust in a clear and visual way. These maps turned Vladek's memories into something we can see, helping us imagine where events happen and how people survive. Even if some maps are not perfectly accurate, because, well, they won't be, it actually shows how fear and trauma affected Vladek's memory, so it's even more accurate to be true. Here you can see 3 maps, even though there are more in the book. First, you can see the camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is the second Auschwitz, basically. And then at the first camp of Auschwitz, in the corner of the second page, right? So the camps are actually very close to each other, even though one is very big and one is smaller. So in Auschwitz-Birkenau 2, that's where they sent women and children for immediate extermination. And now in the first Auschwitz, Camp Auschwitz 1, it's basically where they send men, young men, and people who were able to work, to do forced labor. But eventually, everybody was killed, even if it was from hunger, from cold, from illness, or from torture. So, why is Mao still relevant today? Because, well, you all know it. Anti-Semitism and racism still exist in many parts of the world, even if it's not as intense as it was at that time. It shows how propaganda dehumanizes people, and it's something we can still see in modern conflicts. It helps young people understand history in a way that is emotional and personal, not just academic. And it encourages conversation about mental health, trauma, and family relationships. Hatred and racism destroy lives and entire generations, and you can understand that in the book. You can definitely understand that. You see how ruined artist's life is. Survival comes at a cost, and trauma does not end when the war ends. It stays engraved in people's minds. Every story of the Holocaust must be remembered so that such events are never repeated. It teaches empathy, historical awareness, and the value of human dignity. So as we move toward the end of this presentation, did you guys know that this absolutely fabulous and amazing book has been banned in several states of the US and in Russia? Well, it's because of different reasons, but it's in 2 countries, guys. It's 2 countries. So, in the US, it was banned by a school board because apparently it was too provocative when he depicted his mother's dead corpse inside a bathtub, and we could see her breasts. And in Russia, apparently because there is a swastika on the cover, when the book is clearly against anti-Semitism and against Nazism, and it's clearly not the topic. So it's very hypocritical, I believe. Both reasons are very hypocritical. So I definitely recommend that you go read Art Spiegelman's opinion on banning his book in these 2 countries. You can go on this link. I'll have it in the description too. So you can definitely go read it. It will be very interesting. I have 2 extracts here from this speech. So the journalist asks, specifically the complaint was about it being sexually explicit. And Spiegelman says, well, at first I didn't understand what they were talking about because of the representation of the Jews as mice when they stripped off their clothes. There was barely a way to see any genitalia. And then I found out that it was described as a nude woman, not a nude mouse, but a nude woman. I realized it was about the section of the book that's about my mother's suicide, where she killed herself in a bathtub. It has a shape of breast, but every kid must have seen a mother's breast at some point, even if they're formula fed. That's nothing. There's nothing there that could possibly titillate. Sorry. Even if you're a sadist, you wouldn't go to that one for the picture to see a dead body. And so I was offended, just like they were. But I was offended by describing a naked corpse as a nude woman. And then the journalist says, do you think it's really that the story makes people uncomfortable? But the other aspect is the fact that every character in the book is wearing an animal mask. Makes it kind of universal. It has an aspect of fables, fairy tales, funny animal comics like Donald Duck, and ultimately Aesop fables. And so that makes it general. And so no matter how specific the information is, it's about what it means to dehumanize someone, to project otherness onto them. The othering of people. It could be anywhere. It's about such a macho culture. The idea of I am the master race, I am superior to you because white lives matter or whatever. So that was where they started, and that seems to be the hot button in America right now. We haven't learned much from the past, but there's some things you should be able to figure out. Book burning leads to people burning, so it's something that needs to be fought against. So thank you very much, guys. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. I'll be back very soon with a new one, very interesting one. I don't know if you like it. Thank you very much for your patience. See you very soon. I love you. Bye.